And this is the second video that I'm making for U.S. Government and Speech at Miami Valley. And our assignment this time was to make a video on anything from Unit 2. So what I would like to talk about is judicial review and how it relates to a TED Talk about mythology by Davut Patanek that we watched in class the other day. And judicial review is legally defined as a court's authority to examine an executive or legislative act and to invalidate the act if it is contrary to the constitutional principles. So what this means is that in a court case, when the judge and the jury is unaware of whether a certain situation is constitutional or unconstitutional, they are allowed to take it under judicial review to get the majority opinion on whether such act was constitutional or not. And the founding fathers created judicial review because they knew the future would bring conflict. And they knew that they did not want the Constitution to be touched. They didn't want the rules to change or anything. But they knew that the people in the future may not read the laws that they had defined in the exact same way that they had written them. So this act allows people to look at what is written and take note of what they believe and what they think it means based on those foundational rules. And this is important because some things some people may have a different opinion of, yet it may seem constitutional, but it may not seem right. So that's why this is such an important thing in the court cases today. And we've seen it recently in a lot of court cases, actually, in the United States. And the way I'm relating this to the video is that this video that we watched on mythology, it was talking about the world versus my world. And these two things kind of relate to a judicial review because one person's perspective can be completely different than another's. My perspective of something could be completely different from the world's perspective on something. So I can apply judicial review to the way I act because when I look at things in my world, I'm taking facts that are out and of the world that are already there, that have been there for years and haven't changed. I'm taking these solid facts and figures and I'm deciding how I'm going to look at them and how I'm going to perceive them in my sight versus the way the world may perceive them. And the question is, which one is right to look at, the way the world views it or the way I view it? And judicial review shows us that it can be viewed either way, that not one is necessarily right depending on the situation. Because if one is something terrible about murder or a huge felony, and one is simply about jaywalking, they could be seen completely different. Obviously, more specifically in a court case, the examples would be quite different, and that would be undergoing judicial review, but it's apparent that just these two very different ideas can relate to each other, that judicial review can relate to something completely different, as in my view of how I view the world. But this is definitely something that I kind of took in really deep to me because I can see how things in my life relate to factual information, and it just reinforces the idea that these facts are true, and that is what's important. And when the founding fathers created these things, they knew that, and they knew what was important to set off a good future for the rest of the world. And that's why I think that personal opinion is a very, very valuable thing. It may not always be right, but it's valuable and it's a tool. Opinions are tools to be used, but they're to be used wisely and along the correct standards and rules set out for life. So, yeah.